on the screen. DJ, please. You can see your countries where you have operations in, or where you're headquartered, or where you're based, and the level of insurance penetration that we have. South Africa continues to lead in the continent with a penetration of 11.54%, and the rest of the countries are below the global average of 6.80. We're now in Uganda for this conference, and Uganda has an insurance penetration of 0.89%. So really, this slide goes to tell you that we have a lot to do as players in the reinsurance, with the re in brackets, because that means reinsurers and insurers, companies operating across Africa, to build lasting trust and exceptional service, as we discuss the future of customer service, be very innovative and leverage all the tools available to us, technology, AI, etc. Utilize technology and leverage on collaborations across all stakeholders for financial inclusion. Climate change continues to affect Africa in a very disproportionate way, to use the terminology commonly used by the UN. As you can see on your screens, Africa continues to experience a lot of droughts, flooding, a lot of cyclones, which I will cover in the next slide. And this means that we are seeing an increasing trend in the number of losses that we're seeing when it comes to all sectors, because in the event of a flooding or a drought, directly we have your agriculture impacted, indirectly you have energy. The very sad cases that we've seen in Zambia, Southern Africa, in the Horn of Africa, where we are very dependent on hydropower, and in the event where the rains do not come, that means that there is a lot of rationing on power, a lot of industries are unable to operate, and that trickles down to even individuals beyond businesses. So how can we as an industry help the market, or even the businesses and individuals and the economies across Africa to be able to withstand this and become more resilient? As you can see in my next slide, there is rising physical risks that are affecting our underwriting processes, our pricing, reserving, and modeling, because, and I believe you can again see your countries, the vulnerability scores continue to go up, and that is because we're experiencing more floods, more droughts, more heat waves, more landslides, more wildfires. I think it should have been last year when somebody on X or Twitter mentioned that we'll continue to see some of these videos online until you're the one filming that wildfire. And before it gets to that, I believe as an industry, for us to be able to tie together people, planet, and profit, we need to up our underwriting, our pricing, our reserving, and we need to leverage on data to make sure that our models take into account some of these disasters that we are seeing. So as players in an industry that deals with risk, as opposed to moving away from that or shying away from business that is not profitable, how can we revise our pricing, ensure that we have adequate reserves, and make sure that we share data and collaborate across the industry to improve our risk models as this benefits everybody? Globally, you can see the trend is similar, where countries have continued to experience a lot of storms, a lot of droughts. In United States, in Japan, where we're getting our retro. So even in years when we're not having storms or floods or droughts in Africa, which is rare, we still are greatly impacted by our retro partners globally. And also, as you can see, we've had across all the regions, Eastern, Southern, Western, and East Africa, we've had cyclones, we've had a lot of droughts, a lot of floods, and this impacts both the non-life and the life business. Because every time we experience this, we not only have industries and individuals losing their livelihoods, but also their lives. And the payouts, I believe last year the articles on the newspapers sort of alluded this to be 1.5 billion plus losses that the insurance industry had to bear. So that should call us to action to not only revise our models and our underwriting internally, but also build capacity across the industry through the collaborations that we have. Moving on to another very interesting shift that impacts all of us because we do not operate in a vacuum. We have regulations and political landscape and cross-border collaborations. And I'll start with the most interesting one. We're continually impacted by Trump politics, where we have a lot of backlash on environmental, social, and governance in the US. And you've seen a lot of companies rolling back on the commitments that they have made. Unfortunately, as a continent, we do not have the luxury to do that because, as you know, we are developing countries. We are continually building our countries. And therefore, we need to leverage everything possible to make sure that we manage the risk that we are exposed to. On the other side, on the EU, we have the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Standards, or directive, that requires companies to consider people and planet beyond just profits and to disclose how they are handling climate disasters we are seeing in the globe. Across Africa, we have the NDSI, the Nairobi Declaration on Sustainable Insurance, which a lot of you are signatories to, including ZEPRI. And what the NDSI seeks to do is to bring that partnership to enable the collaborators, all the stakeholders in the industry to share information on how they've been able to handle environment, climate change, social aspects, as well as governance. So we have regulators, we have primary insurers, we have reinsurers, all collaborating to try and integrate ESG across the industry. And then we have to bring the regulator on board on all these matters as an industry. And for that, proudly as ZEPRI, we host an annual Insurance Regulators Forum to try and make sure that the regulator understands the kind of sustainable insurance products that we are bringing into the market to make sure that individuals and companies continue to be able to remain resilient despite the increasing spike or the rising trend in disasters that they're experiencing. We have African Risk Capacity, who I believe are in the room, who continue to provide very much needed products across the market on parametric insurance to the AU member states for climate and health risks. And globally, we have the International Sustainable Standards Board that is now requiring companies beyond just disclosing financial and economic performance to disclose how they're handling sustainability risks and opportunities, as well as climate-related risks and opportunities. And as you can see on your screens, by 2030, all countries will have the IFRS S1 and S2 in effect. And that means as of today, whether you're operating in Africa, Eastern or Southern, or West Africa, or wherever you have your operations, you will need to move beyond profit and start looking at how you're leveraging the opportunities presented by climate change, as well as sustainability and the shifts that we are seeing, as well as the disclosures that investors now need before they even partner with you or invest in your business. African demographics and landscape, to my next slide. We have a population of 1.5 billion, which continues to grow, a lot of it made of young people who are very digital or digitally savvy, that we need to make sure that as an industry, while we've been known to be very conservative and move at much slower pace, that we leverage on the tools that this generation is using to make sure that we serve the customer and meet their needs as they evolve. We are, again, as a continent, very dependent on agriculture, and therefore we need to make sure, as opposed to shying away from this sector that is greatly impacted by climate change, that we provide products that serve the people who are directly and indirectly employed or working in this sector. And food remains a basic need. So as an insurance industry, we need to think of that and make sure that we factor in how to remain sustainable by not shying away from writing risk in this sector, but providing products that meet the customer's needs. The energy gap continues to remain at 58%, only having access to electricity, mostly hydro, which we've been proven that with the droughts that we are seeing cannot be sustainable. So as an industry then, for us to remain sustainable, we need to think of all other kinds of renewable energies that we can leverage on, or rather support, either by directly investing in or writing business that supports geothermal, that supports solar, and all other types across your different countries. SMEs as well, which touch on microinsurance, continue to be very key for Africa, employing more than 90% of the population that I alluded to earlier. So how can we, as opposed to just aiming to do big business with big corporates, serve SMEs and individuals to make sure that they're included in the financial chain and that they're able to borrow from the banks, which insurance helps them by getting guarantees that they will be able to pivot every time there's some of these disasters impacting them. And what that means is that as an industry, for us to remain sustainable, we have to develop or continue to develop, as I know some of the companies already have this, parametric insurance for agriculture and energy projects, microinsurance for SMEs, cater to a very conscious consumer, the Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, affordable housing, greenhousing I must mention, where then you use materials that can withstand the climate disasters that we are seeing, be very financially inclusive, that is, serve the underserved that have continually been excluded from the traditional business, as we all know. We have a lot of infrastructure that is particularly public infrastructural assets that remain uninsured. So how can we again support the public sector to remain resilient in the wake of all the disasters that we are seeing? And finally, renewable energy, which I mentioned earlier. The other shift that we are seeing is tech, innovation, AI, and cybersecurity. And GSMA, according to their 2025 focus, has found out that 623 million people across Africa have access to mobile service in one way or another, whether it's the smartphones or you have the traditional little phone, the Nokias, etc. And therefore, as an industry, the question we need to ask ourselves is how can we leverage this number of people who have a device in their hands to not only create awareness and trust and transparency, but make insurance very accessible to them. Then we have the giant AI that is transforming our lives now. I know a lot of us, being in the insurance industry, which is very conservative, you probably only know ChatGPT, which is okay, but we need to continually find ways of leveraging AI, particularly on making data-driven decisions. We've continued to complain how Africa doesn't have enough data, or analyzing the data is too hectic, or you don't want to increase the number of people you are hiring. This platform presents you with an opportunity for you to be able to analyze loads of data, if you feed it with credible data, of course, for you to be able to better your models for pricing and reserving. Cybersecurity, which I believe all of you know about and have products around it. And then InsurTech, which is insurance merging with technology to advance the customer experience, the customer experience by processing claims much faster, by accessing the underserved markets. And I'll give you an example later of how we are leveraging that, as I discuss where we are at as an industry, and making data-driven decisions. So where are we at as an industry? Broadly, on my next slide, we have the UNEP 5 principles of sustainable insurance, in case you're asking yourself where to begin. And the UNEP 5 PSI, which ZEPRI is a signatory to, provides a very simple guideline on how to integrate sustainability into your business. Firstly, principle number 1 requires you to integrate sustainability in your decision making, not just climate change or the environment by planting trees, but by making sure that you've thought through in your risk management, in your compliance, in your collaborations and partnerships, on how your business will continue to thrive despite the shifts that we've discussed. And number 2, is the collaboration and partnerships that we need as industry players. So how can we have a healthy collaboration and competition that ensures that we share data and disclose some of these things and borrow best practices from each other? And number 3 is working together with the regulators, because we do not operate in a vacuum or in a place without laws. So how can we influence that to make sure that our regulators come along and that they're also privy to what is happening globally, given as private sector we sit with a lot of assets, with a lot of technical knowledge that the regulators could leverage on to make better policies that are friendly to all of us. And finally, the customer of today, and I believe the customer going into the future, is very tech savvy. So how can we as an industry demonstrate accountability and transparency? And I believe all the speakers who took the stage yesterday and on the first day talked about the need for trust and transparency in this industry, where the fine print, I don't know how we'll work around that, does not hinder people from being compensated when some of these risks materialize. The next one is on ESG integration, and in case you don't know what ESG is, ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. So integrating this across your portfolio, across your operations, not only meets compliance requirements that we're seeing increasingly, but also helps you with your risk management, also makes you very attractive to investors, because they're continually very conscious of how climate presents a huge risk and the opportunities that are there as an industry for us to leverage. And be on the lookout, as ZEPRI will publish our second sustainability report later this year to discuss how we're doing that as a company. And congratulations to all our partners and peers in the industry who've published theirs already. Innovation and tech, as I said earlier, InsurTech, we've continually seen products that tie together insurance and technology and leverage the increasing technological penetration across Africa, if there's a terminology like that. And a lot of startups in this space continue to require investments. And I want you to look at insurance as the underwriting side and investments. So we sit on a lot of assets that we are capable of investing and enabling money to trickle to some of these entrepreneurs who have fantastic ideas that only require more funding or more technical capacity for them to integrate that into our industry for better solutions. And as ZEPRI, we run an innovation hub launched in 2023 to just share an example of how that is working in the space. Customer service, which remains very integral for us to be able to thrive as we serve a very conscious customer going forward. You have the values that you need to embody as a player in the industry to ensure that we are no longer viewed as, the industry that will take your premium and not compensate you when the risk materializes. And as we do our capacity building, even in the grassroots, make sure that we embrace these values of sincerity, reliability, consistency, competence, integrity, and commitment, all that being summarized as trust and transparency. I've mentioned earlier when I was giving the example of ARC, who is a peer in the industry, on parametric insurance. And I believe a majority of you know how parametric insurance works, where there is a trigger. There is a trigger, whether it's the levels of water, rainfall, drought, temperature, etc. And how the industry is leveraging that. And I believe a lot of you across the Eastern and Southern Africa, you've worked with our subsidiary ECA, which has a lot of products on this. And the DRIVE project, I believe in the southern region, it's called Repair for pastoralists, where then again parametric insurance is leveraged to be able to compensate farmers and pastoralists when they're affected by droughts, flooding, that we are seeing across the region. And for us to be able to do that as an industry, collaboration and partnerships remains very key, not just with players in the industry, but also partnerships such as DFIs that help a lot with de-risking, partnerships with the banks because they need our guarantees for them to be able to confidently lend to different players, whether corporates or individuals in the economies we operate in, as well as the governments, that is the regulators and policymakers, for us to collaborate with them for growth and excellence in the insurance industry. I said that I was going to give you an example of a project that I believe leverages and everything that we've been able to discuss in my prior slides, or all the global shifts and trends that we've seen. And that is the drive. When I thought of what would be a good example to share, I thought, why not share a project from, ZEPRI, which I can confidently speak about. And I believe our peers in the industry are doing wonderful work. It's just that with the time limitation, we couldn't discuss way more. But I'll discuss the DRIVE project, and DRIVE is an abbreviation of De-risking, Inclusion and Value Enhancement, which is a project for pastoralists operating in the Horn of Africa, that is Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia, and Djibouti. And so far, as you can see on the screen, you can see the amount of money, directly and indirectly, that we've been able to mobilize, and included the pastoralists who traditionally would not have the kind of collaterals that banks look for them to be able not only to survive the droughts that have continued to impact the Horn of Africa, but also be assured that in the event of these disasters, they are able to continue with their livelihoods because they are compensated. They are able to access banks, open accounts, as well as borrow. And this project has only been able to materialize or continue to be a huge success story through the collaboration with the World Bank and all primary insurers, as well as reinsurers in the industry. And this project is proudly implemented by ZEPRI, as you see on the screen. When the person controlling my slides clicks next. Other sustainability efforts that we are making as an industry, and all this, even as I discussed them in the angle of ZEPRI, we've only been able to do this with a lot of partnerships and collaborations within the industry and beyond. That is with DFIs, with a lot of tech companies, with a lot of companies that are leveraging on AI, with a lot of governments. As I mentioned earlier, we have the Insurers Regulators Forum annually. So all this has been able to materialize because of the partnerships and collaborations across the industry. So to begin with, as an industry, we've talked about parametric insurance. And internally as ZEPRI, we have ECA Africa, which primarily works with farmers, smallholder farmers, to help them remain resilient despite the floods and droughts that we are seeing across Eastern and Southern Africa. And then we have DRIVE, which I have discussed in my prior slide. We have the regulators, who I believe all of us, as opposed to moving away from them or shying away from them or wondering if they will embrace sustainability and what that means to us as insurers, we can bring them on board and have some of these discussions with them, not just at such conferences, but in various engagements that we have with them. And then innovation and tech, knowing that 623 million people across Africa have access to a mobile phone, internet in one way or another, or technology, and now the young generation, your chat GPTs and all other GPTs that we have. How can we as insurers leverage on this to make sure that we find a way of merging insurance and technology to build data-driven, customer-responsive products that address the needs of today? And then we have a lot of technical capacity that is needed beyond your planet, people, environment, even to remain profitable. For us to increase the insurance penetration across Africa and globally, we need to be able to make sure that people have an understanding of what insurance is, that you touch on the grassroots and people begin to have an idea of what products they should be looking out for them to remain resilient. And then we have a lot of regional trade, and across Africa, we've continued to know or be aware of the barriers that are there beyond language, the currencies that we are seeing. And insurance provides a very good leverage for people trading across Africa to be able to move their goods around. And for that, in partnership with Afrexim, which I believe the team here from ZEPRI can explain or elaborate more later, has been able to pilot a $300 million capacity under TABA to support trade facilitation and transit bonds across Africa. And then we have long-term savings, both for SMEs and individuals, as well as affordable housing, which I mentioned earlier. And all this to say that, again, to emphasize a point that I spoke about earlier, that this has only been able to materialize because of the collaborations that we have across the industry. And to bring that to an end, I'll again mention the people that we have in the room that can elaborate more on the projects that I've discussed and where we are at as an industry. And that's the team from ZEPRI that is present here today that will help you with knowing any questions that you might have about the products we mentioned, where we aspire to be, the sustainability efforts as a company and with our peers. And you can have a chat with them at the basement at Bunyonyi meeting room. And with that, I'll bring this conversation to a close, or rather to a pause, and take or welcome any questions that you might have. Thank you so much, and I wish all of us a very sustainable current and future experience, not just for ourselves, but for our customers and all stakeholders that we work with across the continent and across the industry. Thank you.
Oh, Bugalo, 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 like we say here in Uganda, it's very clear, like she said at the start, she's talking from a place of passion and could talk until the cows come home. Do we have any questions? Any questions in the house? If you have a question for Miriam, should be happy to take it now. So if you do have a question, please. Questions? Or has she done a very good job? There is nothing to ask. Going once. Going twice. All right, I think a much deserved round of applause. Okay, there is one question. One question over there. Mama Inshua.
Thank you so much, my daughter. My concern or my question is on the E in the SG. I want you to just elaborate to us very briefly, maybe point form, the E part of the SG. And as far as ZEPRI is concerned, what are your key strategies that you have in place to address the E part of that? Thank you.
I don't know, should I go or you'd like to take more questions?
I don't know unless there's any other question. Over to you.
Thank you so much for that question. One second, I believe you can now hear me. And on the E, which your question is on the E in ESG, which is the environmental pillar. And the environmental pillar broadly encompasses climate change, natural resources, so your water, biodiversity, etc. is included in that. And broadly, I'll start broadly as an industry where we are at, and then bring it home as ZEPRI where we are at. Broadly as an industry, we are increasingly seeing products that cater for even products coming up that cater for human-wildlife conflicts, which is traditionally something that, you know, as insurers, we weren't very much into. But increasingly, we are seeing how human-wildlife conflict is exacerbated by climate change, where then, and to use an example maybe that is an oversimplification of what it is, we're seeing animals leaving the parks or the game reserves and moving into people's farms where they destroy crops or even kill people. So as an industry, as we develop these products, we leverage on data on increasingly how these climate disasters are happening, as well as how we can be able to work with the local communities to be able to not kill the animals, but at the same time, not have them destroy the agricultural products that the farmers or companies where we have SMEs working in that space have in their farms. So if you have an insurance product around that caters or covers the farmers, covers in the event where the government has claims on lives or injuries as a result of wildlife, then we continually see some of these disputes or animosity towards wildlife or natural resources decreasing. As ZEPRI, we piloted a product on human-wildlife conflict, HWC, in partnership with UNDP and other collaborators. We are also big on what traditionally was CSR, planting trees. And as you've seen, in our 30th anniversary, we had a goal to plant 30,000 trees across all the markets that we are in. And now that we are Pan-African and going beyond COMESA region, we'll seek to partner with collaborators in those, not just in the industry, but in those economies to be able to increase or sustain the biodiversity that we have. And I believe people across the room have even more examples of what they're doing, particularly on the environmental pillar and climate disasters. And even on the DRIVE project, to just add one more point, what we've observed with the DRIVE project as we engage with the pastoralists is that the more we build capacity and teach them beyond insurance in partnership with farms or organizations in the agricultural space, they are able to develop new ways of feeding their animals that go beyond overgrazing or any other forms that included clearing land or anything that was very detrimental to the environment. So how can people conserve or protect the planet as they continue to operate businesses and ensure that the environment is not negatively impacted?
Thank you very much, Miriam, for a job well done. We can agree she has done justice to the topic, and would like to invite Mr. Paulo, an OESAI board member, to award her with her appreciation. A round of applause for him as he makes his way to the stage.
I know we can do better than that, and as far as the hand clap is concerned, and a smile, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Miriam. I think you've done an absolutely splendid job. We'll allow for some photo ops so that indeed you can tell your grandmother,
I even got an award.
I even got an award. Tell her you were the best speaker or whatever you choose to say. Thank you so much. Over to you, Josephine.
Thank you very much. We'll have some sponsor moments before we get into our next conversation. Over to you, Legacy.
"40 years, in the grand scheme of things, is just a blink of an eye. But for Continental Re, it's been an exciting journey of resilience and growth. From humble beginnings to becoming Africa's leading reinsurer. Our story began in Nigeria in 1985, when Continental Re started out, initially as a small private reinsurance company. We were a small company, but we had big ambitions. Our name embodies our vision and reflects our Pan-African presence. It is distinctive and future-oriented, positioning us for growth and evolution. And our logo visually reinforces this identity. The symbol derived from the geometric representation of the letter C and R. In January 1990, we launched our life business. Fast forward to 2000, and we converted to a public limited liability company. 2007 was pivotal. We recapitalized from $13 million to $70 million. And on May 30 in that year, we proudly listed on the Nigeria Stock Exchange. We have never stood still, opening regional offices in Cameroon, Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, Tunisia, and Botswana. 10 years ago, we launched the Pan-African Reinsurance and Insurance Journalism Awards, celebrating reporting excellence in insurance across the continent.
For me, this is an honor and it's a privilege because it's my first time to enter these awards and to be recognized as a winner for print representing my country. It's a really great honor.
In 2021, we opened our new corporate head office here in Lagos, marking another milestone. And in 2024, we launched the CRE Academy, investing in Africa's future. So here we are, 4 decades on. Times may have changed, but we remain committed to delivering sustainable value to our clients, shareholders, and other stakeholders across the continent. Continental Re is now a mature top-tier reinsurer, committed to financial strength and growth. We are raising capital, exploring new listings, and driving a Pan-African strategy to bridge the protection gap. This commitment is reflected in the moments that matter most, from the COVID-19 pandemic to the Beirut explosion and other major industrial, energy, and climate-related catastrophes. We have been there, helping businesses recover, helping livelihoods rebuild, and helping economies stabilize. We must build resilience, increasing local capital, enhancing risk pooling, and creating viable underwriting solutions to tackle Africa's and the world's emerging risks. Here we are, 4 decades on. What's next for Continental Re? We are strengthening our financial base and driving an agenda to bridge the protection gap. We are dedicated to delivering sustainable value to our clients, shareholders, and other stakeholders. We are building a stronger and a more resilient Africa. We are on the verge of a new era,
thoughts on this topic. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Arthur. Arinitwe Ronald. The initials are AAR, not the insurance, but those are the initials of my names. I'm the managing director at Task Managers. I'm a data analytics consultant, and I'm also a data analytics trainer at the corporatetrainer.online. I'm happy to be here to be part of this discussion.
Thank you, Arthur. I'm actually happy to know that you are AAR because I'm also Mama AAR. I have 2 daughters and all of them, their names, their initials is AAR. So I will start off with you, or in that case. So we are seeing that we are in a very fast-paced digital world, and our customers have very high expectations, and they expect us to use data to leverage analytics and also just to understand what are their needs and what kind of products that we can come up with. So can you start us off by telling us, in your world, what do you think this topic, data to delight, and using analytics to elevate customer experience means to you?
Thank you. To begin with, we need to understand data. 2 years ago, I was hosted on Twitter Spaces talking about data analytics and its role in transforming businesses. Midway the conversation, when the listeners were asked to ask questions, they were asking about their internet bundles being consumed so fast. So I'll start by talking about data. So data is a trail left behind in everything that we do. For instance, there is data about my personal behaviors, how I wake up, what I eat, how I sit, how much I spend standing, and possibly if we can look at that trail left behind by my actions, it could explain why I have added some 5 kilograms in maybe the last 2 years. That means that if we are going to delight a customer in insurance, we need to look at the trail left behind, either by what we have done right or what we have not done right. If we do look at what is it that we have done right that has made some customers happy, then we can replicate it to delight even more customers. If we can look at our partners, about especially those, I was looking at the numbers, and I'm looking at Uganda at 0.89 and South Africa at 11%, and I'm asking, what is it that South Africa has done that we can benchmark on to delight our customers? So in terms of data, we are looking at what is working well, what do customers want that we can do to delight our customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. You've said data is the trail that we leave behind. So I'll ask Patrick, how do we determine the data that is valuable, most valuable for improving customer experience? We do know that delighting the customer begins with the first impression that they have of us.
When I look at the customer service, I look at it as a journey, in my view. It does not start when the customer has been onboarded. In fact, it starts even when the customer is looking for a product they want to buy. And looking at exactly the current of generation that we're looking at, they do already check online what they want. So by the time they are coming to you, actually they know what they are coming to get from you and what is available in the market. So if you look at it, then you need to check at customer journey, starting all the way from the time the customer is thinking about you to the time is boarding, to the time you're processing, in terms of policy servicing up to the claim stage. And having picked it as a journey, one of the areas I've identified practically in my life is that it's very important to understand the customer before they buy the product or the product that you're designing for your customer. Because if, for example, I buy a product that is not giving the value to me, or I feel as if maybe I'm cheated from that product, irrespective of the journey you give me, I'll never appreciate. You may give me all the calls, you may give me all the giftings, but if the product does not meet my need, I still have a bitter taste in my mouth. So from my experience, I've realized the data that is very key at to make sure that you have a good customer service throughout the journey is the data you get before when you're doing a design of a product. How well do you know the customer? Have you understood what is their likes? What is their maybe, for example, earning behaviors? How do they earn their incomes? So as you design a product, data very much important. And I think it's something that as insurance, we need to always have in mind that we need to have markets research to be able to understand that customer in mind even before we give the product to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Patrick, I'll move to you, Pradnya. When Miriam was speaking, we saw the presentation and we saw that Africa's penetration rate is less than 3%. And Patrick says we need to understand our customers. So it means there's a disconnect that is leading to this. So what do you think we can do to unlock Africa's underinsured using data?
We can have certain steps to unlock the underinsured population of Africa. Like we can use the several data analysis models, like leveraging the mobile data or the weather pattern or the satellite images for risk assessment rather than relying on the historical data that we have in our hands. We can also utilize AI to detect the frauds and to minimize and mitigate the risk. We can make the claim process more automated so the claim settlement can be faster. In short, we have to do the data more accessible, more efficient, and more close to the people so they don't have to go and hunt it, but it is just next door to them. Then this underinsured population, which is not able to access the data, will be able to use it very promptly.
Thank you. Dr. Mande, you are representing the reinsurers in the room. And in regards to data, what unconventional data sets are proving to be very valuable for the reinsurance analytics? I think this is really important to ensure that we are able to support the underwriter so that we are able to increase on our penetration rate.
Thank you very much, Rose, for that question. I think the others have talked about the human side of data, and now Rose has given me the difficult part to talk about the technical aspect. Thank you very much. So back to reinsurance in terms of elevating customers' experience using data analytics. Now, if you look at the value chain, the insurance value chain, okay, at the end of the spectrum is actually the reinsurance entities, whether the retrocessioners or the reinsurance entities, that becomes the backbone of the risk taking, because we provide capacity and we provide learning experience, we provide training to the community in the entire value chain. Now, we need data to actually drive that customer experience in any range of that value chain. And it's not just looking at traditional data in terms of traditional claims data, in terms of when did the claim occur, the date of loss, or the amount or the quantum of loss. But right now, we're talking about unconventional data sets, so that when we are dealing with our customers, we are not just looking at it from that traditional data set, but in terms of unconventional data set. I will just pick two examples of those unconventional data sets. One is the climate and weather models. So we just don't want the primary insurers or even the cedants, okay, to just onboard their risk and then transfer that risk to the reinsurance company. But we want data to support our decision analytics. Now, we'll be talking about climate change. You've seen all the different presentations. We've seen areas with extreme temperature. We've seen areas with extreme drought. We've seen areas with extreme wildfires. Okay, we've seen all these events as a result of climate change. So we must leverage on climate data to drive our decision. Now, how does it work? I will give you a typical example. For instance, in Waikare, we've deployed a climate risk assessment tool. Now, what does that do for us? It's not just for us to determine our pricing or to determine the share of the risk we participate in, but it's also to elevate the customer experience from our perspective. So when we plug in the customer data into that particular tool, we are able to see the impact of climate change on that customer's asset. Whether it is wildfire, or it is tropical cyclone, or it is extreme heat, or it is flooding. Now, we take it a step further to do the analysis, and then now provide, when we see there are significant deviations or significant patterns in the data, now provide that information to the client, which will enable them to implement risk mitigation. In doing that, remember insurance, we talk about indemnity, but we don't want to come to that point of indemnity. We want to experience the reinsurance or the insurance satisfaction by preventing those risks which can be prevented. So one is the unconventional data, which is climate model. Then secondly, you look at demographic shift. Now we've had different discussions, for instance, the mobile penetration or the digital footprint, okay, or using remote sensing, or using geographic information system to not do a kind of customer engagement so that the products are not innovative, such that we don't actually wait for the actual client or customer to file his or her claim. You are able to now preempt that at a level of a given flood level, you are able, there's a trigger that enables the policy to pay. So using this unconventional data set, you are creating a different customer experience, which is the moment of truth when the customer has an engagement with your institution. So again, for the reinsurance industry, data analytics, outside the traditional data, okay, is important to create a different experience such that the customer, okay, at every point in time has a definitive moment of engagement with the insurance industry. No, just to say for now. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Dr. Mande. Maybe we can hear from Patrick on some of the lessons, that some wins also that he can share with us when it comes to the practical aspect of data and data analytics at Old Mutual.
I'll give two examples, maybe one from Old Mutual and different one, which I have done in Uganda. I'll pick one from a company in the group called Faulu Microfinance. They do, being a microfinance institutions, they give loans and insure SMEs and retail customers, but the bigger portion is SMEs. 2 years ago, we're trying to work some, have a innovation project. And as we're working across the group in terms of what can we do in terms of innovation, they came up with a lot of data in terms of what they had come up with various data sets of customers who are working in various markets in Kenya. And I remember one was very key was the trends they are seen in a market, very famous market called Gikomba in Kenya. And they had seen the customer trends, how the customers come in the morning, they come maybe borrow some money, and then in the evening, some of the customers come to pay off the loan. So they realize actually there's trade, there's some trend that they can be able to utilize here to come with a product that can be available for them. So one thing they had to do was to ensure they get an agency, banking agent in that locality that can be able to handle those customers, because at that time they didn't have a branch in the locality. And then the second thing that we were looking at that point to say then, since we have seen the kind of pattern of these customers, most of them are traders, maybe the ladies who do retail distribution. Maybe in the morning, somebody has come offloaded some sacks of potatoes, and then they buy 2 or 3 sacks, and they have then to retail to the customers there. So with that data, we are able then to actually come up with a product for them, because we had analyzed and see what is their trends, what is the amount of money they save on a daily basis, what is it that the amount of money they borrow. And when you look at that amount of money, then you will not give them a traditional banking policy. If maybe you're charging a rate of 12% per annum, then you need to think, this customer then who is maybe turning over a loan in a day, what rate do you charge them? And then became very, a product that I think was able to give them a mileage in terms of work. I think the second, I'll look at data. I think this bit I was involved more in terms of even getting the data himself through a survey. I think my early 2-3 years in Uganda, I did some work with my number of NGOs. They had come up with these programs they ran for poverty alleviation, especially I think an NGO called TPO, Compassion, Family Health International. It was a conglomerate of 6 or 7 NGOs. They were giving money to alleviate poverty in the various parts of the country. So with the data they had showed that as they were helping the customers or their people to get out of poverty, in case there's one small incident, as usually say, some of the people are vulnerable, they have one incident away from being poor. Then they would help them to come up, but one incident would bring them down. And then they realized actually, as much as something that was not very easy to convince, they need to convince these people, as much as they are on the lower end of the pyramid, to buy an insurance product. So I was involved almost like here. I'm going to do research. I traveled most of the villages in the West Uganda to be able to get details, the family sizes, the income levels, for us to be able to craft a policy for them. So we're able to look at what are the needs they had, education, agricultural risks, and then come up with a product for them. Obviously, because of affordability, the product that we initially could do was a funeral cover, which was very helpful. And I think the biggest issue again came there, how do we then sell insurance to these kind of people when they think that you're taking even 30,000 away from them, which is a small, maybe 1,000 Kenya shillings for those from Kenya, from them. And I think we have to look for how a marketing slogan. In fact, I used to tell them, you need to sell only 2 bunch of bananas for them to buy insurance for yourself for one full for your family for entire year. And it was able to move. But all this was because of the data they had on what was happening with their clientele, how they are getting out of poverty, but one incident will throw them back to poverty. And that was helpful to help us in terms of craft a product and solution for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. I think when you were speaking, you mentioned something to do with NGO. And I wanted to ask Arthur, when insurers partner with other people to come up with products, how can you, or how can they maintain brand loyalty? Because they might end up not being visible to the customer, and Africans generally do not trust invisible things. We have to see for us to buy. So how then can embedded insurance be sold to our people and also maintain brand loyalty?
I think everything is about storytelling. Patrick just mentioned that it was easy to tell someone that for just 2 bunches of matoke, you will cover your family for an entire year. We need to look at the misconceptions about insurance and then demystify them by telling success stories and things which are practical. Before I started insuring or buying insurance policies, I used to think that if I insure my car, for instance, I will have lost my money because I am a careful driver. So I had a policy and it expired and I didn't renew it. It just took 12 hours for my car to be ransacked and everything was taken. And I spent almost half the value of the car because they took everything, including the tires. So those are real stories that personally I have used to get people to actually buy insurance covers. So it is indeed something that you can't see, but what can we point at in terms of stories that we can use to get people to embrace insurance packages or insurance policies? One of I want to refer to Dr. Mande, talking about unconventional data. The unconventional data of used radar, climate and radar forecasts. That's invisible. But if we can point to that kind of data, which is readily available for us all to access, then it is our role to influence media, to educate the masses on what could happen to a farmer, for instance. A farmer could lose all their crops. What are we telling people in the landslide-prone areas in Uganda to embrace insurance, climate change, insurance against climate change? So I think telling stories and using data that's readily available can help change the story.
In the interest of time, I might not be able to ask all the questions we had, but I think I'll do this panel on injustice if we don't look at the new skills which insurance professionals need that can effectively collaborate with the AI systems that we have to ensure that we are able to deliver a delightful customer experience. So Dr. Mande, what can companies do so that they are adequately prepared for this?
Thank you very much, Rose. That's a very important question. We talk a lot about being in the era of AI, artificial intelligence, generative AI, predictive AI, and all kinds of digital discussion. So the truth is that the insurance industry, we cannot shy away from this advancement. Nowadays, you interview candidates for a job role, and they are asking you, how many days do I have to come to the office? So I can just think about when I was first interviewed, if I've asked my potential employer that question, how many days do I have to come to the office? Maybe that would have been the end of my employment. Why am I saying this? It means that this generation is AI savvy. And because it is coming at a tipping point or at a confluence between two generations. So that means if you look at your organization in terms of generational diversity, you must be able to build a training program such that the employees or every staff in the organization become data literate, okay, and have a very good sense of AI awareness. We are not asking for the expert level performance, but we are saying the basic, okay, be able to use even ChatGPT, okay, to do analysis of your risk profile, and then be able to use ChatGPT to actually look at the claims that have been submitted, look at the patterns, are there any fraud, and then quickly identify the gray areas and settle it. Be able to use your Microsoft Teams, your Microsoft Outlook to create auto-respondents, to create tasks, to allocate roles. So we are looking at data literacy for everyone. And that starts with the intentionality. So that means every institution must be intentional intentional at ensuring that every member of their staff have a level or a sense of data literacy and analytical thinking. So that is very pivotal going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Pradna, what do you think we can do as an industry to start improving on this balance between human and AI or machines?
Okay. The machines cannot do everything what human can do. It should be a balance between the human interactions and the technology support. For example, the technology can do the data analysis. It can also do segregation. It can also maybe provide you some ideas on risk mitigations. But ultimately, it's a human who takes the tough decision. It's human who has empathy. So it has to be a blend between the machine and the human interaction for efficient and accessible insurance distribution towards the industry.
Yes, yes,
Can I
please.
just add something to what you said? Okay, this is augmented intelligence. So even when you create a prompt, even on ChatGPT, for instance, it doesn't mean that the output is correct 100%. You, as the human intelligence, you have to now consider that in light of your relationship with the customer. So even when the data output is showing this claim should be denied, but you're not looking at the historical experience and your relation with that client, you are looking at your corporate social responsibility. So that augmented intelligence cannot be expunged from the relationship between humans and AI. So that is very critical. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take two questions from the audience, then we'll have each of them give us their closing remarks so that we are done by 11:10. Only two questions, please.
All right, question one here at the back.
Thank you very much to our panelists. Dr. Gaba Kenneth is my name. We are lucky that we are in an era where large sums of data are available and we can use it to predict trends. But this brings a question of data protection regulations within East and South Africa or in our region. I need one of the panelists to comment about that. And maybe specifically to Mr. Patrick, where do you draw a line between fairness and discrimination when using this data? Because I've seen, for example, when you want to get a policy and one is hypertensive or is a chronic or a bad driver and has an history of an accident, and the prices are so high as if you're chasing away this client. So is this fairness or you're discriminating this client? Thank you.
Good question. Any other question? Just raise your hand. We'll take one more. Okay.
Okay, my name once again Hajat Sebiala, Mama Insurance Africa. Rose, thank you for recognizing me. My question is, since we came in on Monday, there is one thing that has been mentioned, that is trust deficit in the insurance. And that has been on in my 43 years in the insurance industry. I would like to ask you, the experts, how can we use this data to ensure that we reduce on the trust deficit in the insurance space? Thank you.
So, Patrick, you'll take the question on trust. Fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Then Arthur, you can take the other question because you have a wider view outside of us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There is some question that was directly to me, and I will add it if it's fair. Fairness versus what we need to do as an insurance, especially in underwriting, and the issue of trust. I believe the issue of trust has been an historical one. And the problem, I think many countries, I read even in the history, I hear them talking about historical injustices. You find maybe some people, land was taken away, and some things usually hang with us for a while until with time they're able to get off. And if I look at, for example, even the regulator office, they always tell us about deficit and what are we doing to do. And they come up with the regulations and guidelines to help us streamline how we are doing things for the sake of the customer in terms of trust. So one thing is that I think we need to be more vocal with the numbers that we have. Most companies, we're paying a lot of billions of shillings, but we rarely talk about it. So the customer listens to one area, if there's one issue that has gone on social media, is what they believe than the 1,000 that has been paid. So I think as an industry, we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing with the numbers that we have, especially on claims that we have paid? Because the narrative that takes the day, especially on social media, is what people believe it is the truth. So I think one, we need to look at how do we use the data we have, especially on the claim settlements, to be able to make a story for us and insurance industry. And I think it's something our marketing departments or PRs and even the regulator and even association, I know they've been trying to do something that to be able to publicize that as an industry, let's say we paid 500 billion claims this year, so that people can know actually the insurance companies pay claims. Otherwise, what happens, one issue comes up and they think that is what is
would be, I think the future belongs to them who know how to blend the technology along with the human intervention. There are some distribution channels like telecom sector has to be incorporated going ahead. Insurtech companies are leading the race. You have to collaborate the technology along with the insurance. And last, the insurers have to be always innovative towards the industry to solve the upcoming problems. At last, it will be the blend of trust, transparency, and the relevance.
Thank you, Pradnya, Dr. Mande, Patrick, and Arthur. I think this is one topic or discussion that we can spend so much time on it. I'm going now to hand over back to the MC. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Rose. That's why we can do better than that. I think they've done a good job. And I'll ask them just to get up, first of all, for a photo ops moment. And I'll also ask my colleague just to bring some plaques just to appreciate them for a good job done so far. And to support us in giving out those particular plaques, allow me invite Mr. Jean Alien Francis, who is also a board member at OESAI. If you could just come and do us the honors. Why don't we get to our feet and first of all have a photo ops moment? If we could please bring those. All right, let's take the plaques. Jean, if you could come and hand over, thank you. Thank you so much, Rose. Our our Secretary General, Rose Wanda. What a wonder. She says she's the 8th wonder, Mama AAR. And we have Mr. AAR there, I don't know. And Sege, I see you smiling. I'm not going to go there. Thank you so much, Mr. Kimathi from Old Mutual. Thank you so much, Mr. AAR, not the insurer, but the data specialist. And we'll have one more group picture. Thank you, and even as they have that group picture, I'll ask the media team just to get ready to support us with some of the sponsor ads, and I think we have Mirai Insurance, one of our key partners. If we can play those two back to back. As the ad gets ready, we'll just have one more speaker with a short presentation just before we go for our break on wellness.
For over 40 years, we have traversed the African footprint, expanding our knowledge of the mother continent and her people, their ways, traditions, values, and enterprises for their sustainability and protection. It was not just the first step in establishing expertise on the African markets, but building value partners for 2 generations to create a robust ecosystem with insurers and reinsurers across the continent. Emeritus Reinsurance Group's 40-year journey dovetails commanding expertise with a robust balance sheet, tapping onto a large pool of resources and ideas translates to the availability of more resources to write more business, adding value to the insurance sector. Our understanding of risks is enhanced by physical presence in the region and shared knowledge within the group in our chosen markets. Emeritus Reinsurance, let's go beyond.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emeritus. Indeed, let's go beyond. Like I said, we have one more presentation just before we take our break. And to advise you, after the break, we'll be having the AGM meeting here, which is really for members only. And then we'll be having lunch, and it'll be close of business for the day. And we'll gather again at dinner, dressed to the nines. So come in your elegant outfits for that dinner. Now, just because there's insurance, that doesn't mean you don't take care of yourself. It behooves you to ensure that you take good care of yourself. And our next speaker is going to come and support us in that very regard with the topic, Wellness and I. Turn to your neighbor and say, wellness and I. Oh, and me, I don't know. And She's the founder of Utano Health Solutions. She's a doctor and absolutely equal to this task. Why don't we put our hands together for Dr. Precious Milingo as she comes to give us this particular talk on wellness and eye. This one is personal, so pay attention, and there'll be enough time for questions and one-on-ones with the doctor if you would like. If your questions are the kind we can't ask here. Thank you very much. Over to you, doctor.
Good morning, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends. Yes, I'm very excited to be with you this morning. My name is Dr. Precious Mlingo. I'm a medical doctor and a wellness specialist. So my task is, I think, very easy this morning. And also very important. It's the last, I believe, presentation of this conference. Now, I grew up in a small city in a town called Bulawayo in Zimbabwe, and I've lived in Uganda for the last 15 years. I've actually become Ugandan, so I'm Ugandan Zimbabwean. I don't know if you've ever met a Ugandan Zimbabwean. So I grew up in a small town, and I will ask I think the presentation to go up, our slides to go up. I grew up in a small town, and in the small town, I loved to sit by the roadside and look at cars. I loved cars. And when I left this small town to go to a bigger city, I saw this car for the first time called a Mercedes-Benz. And to me, the Mercedes-Benz was the most expensive car in the world. And I told myself when I grow up, I'm going to own 3, right? I'm going to own 1 for the week, 1 for the weekend, and 1 when I go somewhere special. So I was going to have 3 Mercedes-Benz. But I can safely tell you up to now, I do not own a Mercedes-Benz, so that dream did not come true. But as I continued to grow, I realized that no, there are actually cars out there that are much more expensive than a Mercedes-Benz. And I'm sure most of you know some of them. Now, names like Bugatti, names like Lamborghini, names like Ferrari, these are very, very expensive cars. The car you see on the screen is a Bugatti. It's called La Voiture Noire. Excuse my French. It was the most expensive car ever sold in 2019. It sold for 18.9 million United States dollars. Now, when I looked at this car, what made this car special? This car was hand-assembled, right? Not assembled by machines. It took its makers 2 years to make this car. Leather interior, 6 exhausts, speeds of 0 to 100 kilometers in 2.4 seconds. Amazing car. And guess what? They only made 1 of it. 1 La Voiture Noire, which was sold to a secret buyer. Some speculate perhaps it's Ronaldo, perhaps it's Mercy who bought this car. We are not sure. The buyer of this single car ever made remains a secret up to now. Now, why am I talking about this car? As I thought about this car and I looked at this car, it reminded me of something priceless, something special, something that's a piece of art, something that has amazing functionality, and something that is one of the kind. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to the human body. The human body is complex, has several organ systems, respiratory system, cardiovascular system, nervous system, digestive system, each one with its own specific and unique function. In all the wonder of science, we have not been able to replicate a human body. Right? We've been able to try to replicate parts of it, but we have not been able to replicate a human body. When you think of speed, did you know that nerves signals or nerve impulses are transmitted across your nerves at speeds of 360 kilometers per hour? That is the speed of a plane. If you think of strength or robustness, did you know that if all your 639 muscles pulled in one direction, you would generate a force of 20,000 tons? They say each muscle can actually carry over 1,000 times its own weight. That's how amazing your body is. When you think of uniqueness, look at your neighbor. right? Have you ever seen anyone quite like him or quite like her? You are one of the kind. Miriam, out of everyone, out of all the 8 or is it close to 9 billion people out there, there is none quite like you, right? We are unique. Many like to say that our bodies have been built like high-end sports cars, but unfortunately, many of us never experience even 1% of that potential. Now, as I continue to think about the car, the body, I say to myself, if things got really bad and I gave my body to my family and I asked them to liquidate my body part by part, how much would they stand to make? So I went to the internet, I Googled, and I looked at the United States of America and I looked at how much organs go for, because the United States performs the highest number of transplant surgeries every year. So I began to do the math. So I sat down and I'm like, okay, if my heart had to be sold, how much would I make? I would make 1,380,000 United States dollars. If I had to sell my lung, 862,000, and I have 2 lungs, right? So that's times 2. If I had to sell my spleen, would get about 415,000 United States dollars. My intestines, 1.1 million United States dollars. My liver, $800,000. The list goes on and on and on. And when I thought I was done, I remembered, but alas, I have eyes, I have teeth, I have hair, I have nails, and I continued to write the list until I got tired. And by the time I got tired, I said to myself, I believe I am worth no less than $1 billion United States dollars. Turn to your neighbor and say, you are $1 billion asset. And turn to yourself and say, I am $1 billion asset. Yes, and so you may wonder, I've taken you round and round and round, but finally I get to the point. I get to the point this morning. I am here to tell you how to look after that $1 billion asset that is you. That's what my session is about. I needed you to understand the value you contain, right? Now, most of you have very beautiful phones, iPhones, the latest Samsungs. I hate it when my children take my phone and mess around with it and throw it and scratch it, because I attach value to my phone, right? But how much effort do you extend in looking after the $1 billion asset that is you? This is what I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes that I have. And before I do that, I want to introduce you to a concept called being me-sponsible. Being me-sponsible is the art of being responsible to me, the $1 billion asset, for the benefit of my health, my happiness, and my well-being. So I'm calling us today to be responsible as we go through this presentation. Now, the sad reality, my organization, Utano Health Solutions, we offer corporate wellness solutions. And in some of the organizations we go to, we have the privilege of collecting data. We just had a session on data. So our wellness initiatives are data-driven. And one of the things that I've discovered, the sad reality, which I think I'll apply to this room today, is 60% of the people sitting in this room are either obese or overweight. This is what we find when we go into most organizations. 50% of you sitting here, whether you know it or you do not know it yet, are probably hypertensive or pre-hypertensive. These are the statistics we find when we come into organizations like yours. And this one, the next one, I say it with sadness, because 30% of us sitting in this room may one day receive a diagnosis of cancer. The WHO tells us that 30% of all adults globally, whether we're in sub-Saharan Africa, we're in America, we're in Europe, 30% of individuals will get a diagnosis of cancer at some point in their lives. And 10% of us sitting in this room are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. Pre-diabetic means you're on your way to diabetes. Now, these things are very real. Whether we like it or we don't like it, this is what's happening to us. This is what's happening in our organizations. And this is why I'm here to talk about these issues. But the beauty is, a lot of these chronic health issues are, number one, preventable, and are, number two, reversible to a large degree. Now, imagine you are the secret buyer of that beautiful black car that I showed you, right? Do you wait until it has broken down in order for you to take it to the garage? No, you don't. There's something called servicing, right, when it comes to our vehicles. It's the same thing with our bodies. You do not wait. Some people pride themselves. I've spent 10 years without going to the hospital. Shame on you. You should go to the hospital even when you're not sick, right? So you need to service your body. The same way you service your car, right? A good mechanic will tell you at 3,000 or 5,000 kilometers, bring your car in exactly the same as your body. The doctor is speaking today. At least once every year, ladies and gentlemen, you need to set up an appointment with your doctor. You need to have that annual checkup. And these are the tests. I can't go through them because of time, but there are several tests we do. Why do we do these tests? We do these tests, number one, to assess your risk profile. We do these tests in order to catch things early, right? When we have an opportunity to do something about it. We do these tests because perhaps cancer of the breast runs in your family. What can we do proactively to try and ensure that we reduce the risk for you as an individual, right? So it is very important for us once a year, right, especially when you get to my age, to go and have that annual checkup. Now, you buy that beautiful black car, right? Would you go and put in the cheapest fuel on the market? In Uganda, we have something called V-Power, right? And some of you know V-Power from Shell. You would go for the premium fuel, right? This is a beautiful car. This is an expensive car. Only premium fuel should get into a very expensive car. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is very briefly, in like 1 minute, is diet. If there ever was a confusing topic as far as wellness is concerned, is diet, right? And for those of you who try to lose weight or who've tried to, manage your diet in one way or the other, when you go on the internet, you find so many different diets: Atkins diet, blood group diet, you find keto diet, so many different diets out there. But I want to simplify it for you today. What is a healthy diet? A healthy diet is one that improves and maintains your overall health. A healthy diet is one that prevents disease. A healthy diet is one that meets your nutritional requirements, your fluid requirements, your macronutrient intake, your micronutrient intake. A healthy diet is one that leads to healing and not disease. So if whatever diet you are on is not making you better health-wise, then that is not a healthy diet. But to bring it home further, I think, Miriam, you talked about your grandmother. This is my grandmother, my late grandmother. She passed away about 3 years ago, but I still use her as an example. My grandmother, where I was born, we call her Gogo. In Uganda, we call them Jaja, right? Gogo, to me, epitomized wellness. Why? My grandmother, we have no idea how old she was when she died, but what we know is she had grandchildren who had grandchildren. You do the math. She had lived, right? She had lived. And not only did she live, but at whatever age she was, right, before she died, she was healthy. She was fit. She was digging in her garden. I like to say she literally walked into the grave. She was walking upright. So when I looked at my grandmother, I said to myself, you know what? When I'm at her age, I want to be like that. When I'm her age, I don't want to be in a nursing home. I don't want to be walking with a frame. I want to be upright. I want to be healthy. I want to be active like Gogo. Now, when you think about making money, you want to make money, you go and speak to someone who has made a lot of money, not so? Now, for me, who wants to be healthy into my 90s, I go and look at how my grandmother lived her life. My grandmother, if we are to learn about how she ate and what premium fuel she took, if we want to be like her, her food was as close to nature as possible. Right? She grew most of her food. Her food was free of chemicals, free of hormones. free of pesticides, free of antibiotics, artificial colors, flavors, preservatives. Most times, no added sugar. Most times, no added oil or salt. Unprocessed, unrefined, and many times uncooked. Do you get the drift? Right? If wellness is our goal, your food needs to be as close to nature as possible. If you're going to be eating a chicken, has that chicken lived the normal life of a chicken? Not 6 weeks? Has that chicken eaten what a normal chicken is supposed to eat? Right? Most of our chickens nowadays are fed on so many different things. We've heard about ARVs in our food, right? So when it comes to diet, unfortunately, I'm going to stop here. I have so much more to say. Maybe you'll invite me again next year. I'll say more. But your food has to be as close to nature as possible. When you look at your plate, you should be able to tell where the various foods came from. If you look at your food and you can't tell the ingredients that made up the food just by looking at it, then there's a problem, right? I'll leave it there. You buy this beautiful car, and then you decide to park it in the garage. Does that make sense? Right? Same thing with our bodies. Did you know that most of our muscles were made for us to stand and be in an upright position, in motion, and not sitting? Right? I'm sorry we've sat for so long. I was going to invite you to stand and stretch, but I know time is not on my side. Our bodies were built for mobility. Our bodies were built for movement and not for sitting, right? My grandmother would spend her time in her garden, digging, walking, busy. But you and I spend a lot of our time sitting in a chair on a computer, and therefore we talk about something called physical exercise. It's because we need to introduce activity into our lives because our lives have become sedentary. So ladies and gentlemen, exercise. You need to create the time. When I speak of exercise, many people tell me, I just do not have the time. They envision a future where magically the time to exercise will appear. This will not happen. We need to create the time. We need to make the time. We need to be intentional about physical exercise, right? I've listed all the benefits there, but I love to walk. Where I live, I'm able to walk. I'm able to walk 5 or 7 kilometers each morning. Yes, I do it for weight, for all these other issues, but one of the biggest reasons why I walk every morning is because it's great for my mental health. By the time I do my walk, I come back home, I feel like, yes, I can face anything today, right? So ladies and gentlemen, create that time for exercise. I could go into the science of it, how much, how long, what type of exercise you need to do, but at this point in time, I will just say start. If you have not been exercising, create the time and start. You buy this beautiful car and you continue running it 24/7, right? The same way you don't want to park it in the garage, you don't want this car to be running continuously without any rest, right? So you need to rest it. You need to rest your body as well. You need to enjoy a minimum of 7 hours each night of good quality sleep. 7 hours is an average. Some people might need slightly more, some people might need slightly less, but most of us are around the 7 hour mark, right? And the problem usually is not what time you need to wake up. What time you need to wake up is what time you need to wake up. It's fixed, right? The problem is what time you go to bed and what you do before you go to bed. I can see some people laughing because you know you are guilty, right? You need to go to bed at least 2 hours or an hour before midnight. Avoid eating heavy meals at night. So try to make sure you eat at least 2 to 3 hours before going to bed. Avoid electronics use at night. But I know the last thing you look at is your phone before you go to sleep. Why am I saying this? Our phones emit blue light, which interacts with our hypothalamus in the brain and tells the brain that it is daytime. And the brain reduces release of melatonin, which is the hormone of sleep, making it harder for you to fall asleep and stay asleep. So it's important to put away your gadgets, your laptop, the TV, at least 30 minutes before you go to bed, right? So have a routine. If you have difficulty sleeping, there are many natural ways of improving your sleep, right? Come and see me after this. We can talk about them, right? So it's important to get that sleep. Sleep reboots, restores, and replenishes your body. My final slide for today. We cannot run away. If you own a car, the mileage is going to go up, not so? At some point, right? If you're using the car, if you're driving the car, the mileage is definitely going to go up. It's the same thing with life, right? We are growing older, whether we like it or not, and there are many things that catch up with us as we grow older. It becomes harder to lose weight when we grow older, right? So for those of us who are still on the other side of 40 or 50, this is a time to manage your weight. It becomes harder when you get to the other side. Menopause and andropause become issues for both men and women as our hormonal levels dip. So many health conditions start catching up with us: high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, high cholesterol, arthritis, the backaches, fractures become more common. For the men, the prostate issues become a problem. Cancer risk goes up as we grow older. Problems with our vision, problems with our mental health become more common as we grow older, right? And these are all issues that we need to look after. But we don't want to wait to get there to begin to sort out these issues. It's important for us to begin to look after because that body that you're carrying into the 60s is not going to get any better, right? So the healthier you are when you're younger, the healthier you are as you grow older. Social challenges become a big issue. Now, when it comes to social challenges, we need to ensure that we are building those networks now. I think we are important now when we have a position and a title attached to our names. Not so. The day the position, the title is taken away, people are not going to give us a second look. So it's important for us to ensure that we have those supportive social structures now and take them with us as we grow older. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this morning, in these few minutes that I had, the first thing I want you to do is ask yourself, what is my responsibility to myself? From what I've said, is it that annual checkup that you haven't done? Is it that exercise that you've been putting off, right? That food in your plate, does it need to change today, right? So the first thing is, what is your responsibility to yourself? The second responsibility, most of us here are leaders. What is our responsibility for the wellness of the people that we serve, right? Is wellness a priority in your organization? Second question. And third question, because this is an insurance conference, what does wellness look like in the context of insurance, right? These are questions I would like to leave you with this still morning. Thank you so much for giving me the attention. If there are any questions, I will happily take them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Precious. I think we'll take only 2 questions, and that's because of the interest of time, but I'm very sure you will have numerous questions. But we can only take 2 questions.
Thank you, Doctor, for the good presentation given. I myself will start with exercise. I've been making myself so busy, but I think after this presentation, I surely need to change that. I also want to thank you for the example given of a Mercedes-Benz and the precious car that we really need. But I think in your presentation, you also need to bring something that attaches women. Cars are for men, and that is a fact. How about women? What is that they really feel they cannot do without? I think it will also be touching to them. Otherwise, the example was really good, and I think we've been protecting so much and then forgetting our bodies. So thank you for that example, and we can only promise that the change has started now. Thank you.
Dr. Precious, is there anything similarly attached to women like cars are to men?
I'm not sure why he says cars are attached to men, because I used myself as an example. It was me who likes the cars. It was me who was doing the research. So, see, all the ladies in the house are clapping. We also like cars, honestly. So I don't think that that example is only for men. So my brother, maybe we can have a conversation about cars after this. We also like cars. We also like cars.
Thank you very much. My name is Abdul Salum Cheket from Burundi. I want to agree with the ladies. The gentleman, I think he got it wrong, because even a man with a car won't get ladies. So you better, so ladies are attached to a car as much as men, even more, I think. Thank you.
Very true.
Thank you, Dr. Precious. My name is Donald. Two comments. First of all, I'd like to know this little village, miraculous village where you grew up. It sounds so exciting. The second thing is about maintenance as a person. The reason I don't go for maintenance is every time I go to the doctor with one little illness, I get told of 10 different things that I have which I didn't even know about. Sometimes you get told you now need an operation which you don't even need. So that is why I don't go for service. So, and unfortunately, almost like insurance, the medical profession is slowly losing its trust in a lot of places.
Yes.
And that is something that I think you need to consider as part of your presentations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think from the way you speak, I think we come from the same little village. I think we can have the conversation about our little village and and reminisce. I want to agree with you on the element of trust, because I believe that that issue of profiteering has also entered the medical space. And it's something that we need to do to try and actively restore trust and confidence in the people that we serve. It's a pity, because even myself as a medical doctor, I sometimes struggle with health facilities. But we are, I think in my space, in the wellness space, and those of us who belong in the wellness space, we are trying to ensure that we create spaces that are patient friendly and safe, and where we can have honest conversations with our patients. There's a growing number of medical practitioners, particularly in functional wellness where I belong, where we actually believe that sometimes our patients know more than we do about their own bodies. So when you come to see a practitioner like myself, we have a conversation, we have a dialogue. I know traditionally you sit with a medical doctor and they are, telling you what you need to do. The conversation is one way. You need to do this, you need to do that. And I'll tell you this, I have a lot of patients who come and sit with me and challenge everything that I have to say. And I welcome that. I welcome that, because we have access to the internet. So if I spit out a big word, you could quickly Google and see does what the doctor is saying make sense, right? So let's begin to, I actually encourage my patients to read. And before I ask anyone to go for a procedure, one of the things I ask them to do is get don't work on one opinion. Get a second opinion, get a third opinion if you must, and also research around what the healthcare provider is saying. Any healthcare provider who is secure and confident in what they've said will actually welcome you going to read more about it. So when I'm asking a patient to make a huge investment into their health, I normally say, you know what, go back, think about it, read about it. I actually send information to them, websites, YouTube links. Go and read about it, go and understand it. And when you've understood it, come back and let's have another conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Precious. I think it's clear that we all need to take care of ourselves even before we take care of our customers, because when we are well, then our customers will feed off our energy. We will definitely like to invite Dr. David Kudoy of WICA to appreciate you for this very informative session. Dr. David. DJ, could you give us some music, Mr. David? Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our session today. We will have a tea break, and for the AGM members, you will have a working tea. So you can go out and pick your tea and come back for your session. For the rest of us, we will convene when we are looking very different from what a fruitful session for you as it was for us. Enjoy your afternoon.
In an ever-changing world, risk is everywhere. In an ever-changing world, risk is everywhere. From natural disasters to human error. From the open seas to construction sites. From everyday accidents to rare catastrophes. The need for security, stability, and support has never been greater. At OESAI, we are more than just a service provider. We are your trusted partner in protection. We empower insurers to honor their promises, no matter the scale of the loss. With smart capital, deep analytics, and global insight, we bring strength behind the scenes. Fire insurance, because every business, every home, every life matters, our expert teams work to prevent, protect, and provide, minimizing damage, maximizing recovery. Marine insurance, for a world in motion. Whether by ship, barge, or container, we ensure goods move with confidence and care. From cargo to hull, from port to port, we manage marine risks with precision. Engineering insurance, building the future securely. Infrastructure, energy, high-rise towers, complex projects deserve robust protection. We cover the risks of innovation, so you can build without hesitation. Accident insurance, because life is unpredictable. Whether it's workplace incidents, personal injuries, or public liability. Our solutions are designed to respond fast and support fully. For over 14 years, we've been helping businesses, governments, and insurers turn risk into opportunity. With expert teams across regions, a strong financial foundation, and a commitment to excellence. OESAI delivers solutions that endure, adapt, and protect. Because when the unexpected happens, you don't just need coverage. You need confidence. OESAI, together, towards tomorrow.